Today we'll show you our open source lyophilization tool, which is called LyoPronto. So directly we'll be talking about theoretical part, experiments. I will be showing how to use the tool itself.
So this is a tool for, I'm guessing most of you are familiar with the Lyo calculator that we've been using for many years, this Excel Lyo calculator, and I think every company has its own version of it. This one has Lyo calculator built into it, but in addition to that it has some more capabilities which we'll talk about. It's open source, it's out there. Right now it's available for you to download and run on your computer. Very soon we're going to have a GUI that's going to be built, and we're also going to have the capability for you to run it online. So that's coming up very soon, so stay tuned. So basically it's freely available, open access, anybody can use it. We're hoping all of you use it and then give us some feedback about improvement and so on. It's available on lyopronto.org. That's where you need to go to download it. Peter will show you at the end. Like I said, the GUI is coming soon. Right now it's just a Python code, so you will have to input stuff into the code itself, which is a little non-intuitive to modify somebody else's code, I understand. But once the GUI is out, it's going to be very user-friendly, and we're planning on building the GUI similar to what you'd see when you're setting up a lyophilization experiment for a Lyo, for any lab-scale Lyo. So that you're kind of used to that kind of interface. Talking about the capabilities, the first thing is the freezing calculator. Most of the freezing models that are out there are all finite element, which take a little, it takes a while to run, it also takes a while to set up, you need to understand the boundary conditions and so on. We have a very simplified version of a freezing calculator. It uses something called the lumped capacitance heat transfer. I'll explain what that assumption means in the next slide. But in addition to that, we have this primary drying calculator, which is the famous Lyo calculator, which was created by Professor Pikal. So what that does is it takes your chamber pressure and shelf temperature set points, and then it determines the drying time, determines the product temperature, and so on. So in general, for your to run Lyo calculator, you need to know these two quantities, kV and Rp. kV is the vial heat transfer coefficient, and Rp is the product resistance. Now this calculator also has the capability of extracting your kV and Rp, provided you know some data about the drying process. To get kV, you need to know the drying time. Basically what it does is, if you say experimentally this was a drying time that was observed for these conditions, then it's going to loop through a number of kV values, and then it's going to find the best fit for the experimental drying time. And then for Rp, if you specify a product temperature profile, if you have a thermocouple measurement and you specify it, it's going to extract the product resistance from that data. So if you don't know, you have the ability to extract it as well. And then there's a design space generator. So in general, when you're designing a primary drying cycle, you have something called the design space generator, where you have the constraints of your process and your product, and a range of shelf temperatures and chamber pressures that are specified, and this is able to generate that design space so you can see what your optimal conditions to operate at are. And lastly, we have something called the optimizer. Basically, traditionally what we've been doing is we've been specifying a single set point for the chamber pressure and the shelf temperature during primary drying. But we'll show you modeling results here which show that if you vary the chamber pressure and shelf temperature throughout the cycle, you can get a much faster cycle. So basically what your optimizer does is it tells you the most optimal conditions at every instant of time. So the output is a profile of the chamber pressure and the shelf temperature, and you can keep one of them constant and vary the other if that's what you want to do as well. So just to validate our model and ensure that it's giving the right results, we did some experiments so we can compare against it. These were at a fixed chamber pressure and shelf temperature. Basically it was run on Revo, which is a lab scale Lyo that's manufactured by Milrock. We have this short 6R vials, 5% mannitol solution, 2 ml fill volume. Just one of the shelves is loaded in this experiment. We freeze it at -20, dry it at -5 shelf temperature, and we do this. So like I was talking, we can extract the KV out of this tool, right? So basically, we have 3 different chamber pressures that we run cycles at. Basically, 100, 300, and 1500 millitorr. 1500 millitorr is very high, but we're just pushing it so that we know the KV in the entire range. So basically, we know experimentally what the drying time is. And then we loop through, or we basically iterate through a number of KV values and find the KV that best matches the experimental drying time. So we have different values of this heat transfer coefficient at different chamber pressures. So now that we have 3 chamber pressures and 3 KV values, traditionally this KV has been fit to this 3 coefficient form where you have this Kc, Kp, and Kd. So because we have 3 points, we're able to fit a curve and we're able to extract those values, and that's what you see at the bottom. It's fit to this 3 coefficient form. So with that, basically let me talk about the freezing model first. So what this does is it uses something called the lumped capacitance model. What that means is you're assuming that your whole temperature or your whole product is at a single temperature. So there is no non-uniformity in temperature within the product itself. What you're assuming is that there is no resistance to heat flow within the product. All the resistance is between the product and the surroundings. Okay, so that is kind of like a 0D case where you're assuming that all your product is concentrated at just one point. Now this, in order to check whether this assumption is valid or not, in heat transfer there is this non-dimensional number called the Biot number, which is denoted by that Bi. That is what you usually use to check whether this model is valid or not. In general, when your Biot number is less than 0.1, the error that you generate because of using this assumption is very, very small. So it's okay to use this assumption. Now, freezing in general, in a vial, you have this liquid cooling stage, and then you have this ice crystallization stage, and then you have the solid cooling or the ice cooling stage. So during this liquid cooling, the Biot number is around 0.6, so it's slightly higher than 0.1. And during the rest of the process, it's around 0.1. So there is some error associated with using this model, but it's still not a terrible assumption to use, as I'll show you in the next slide when we compare it with the experiments. So basically the equation that we're solving is the 0D heat transfer equation. We have all these equations here just to show you exactly what we're doing, but just to use the tool you don't need to know any of this. All you need to provide are the inputs. So basically TPR is the temperature of the product. So you're assuming that the whole product is at a single temperature for this freezing model only. If you know your shelf temperature and then your heat transfer and the product properties and so on, you're able to calculate this product temperature. So basically that is done during this liquid cooling stage and the solid cooling stage. So you get a profile. And then during this crystallization stage, in general, what happens is you'll see the liquid cooling up to this point called Tn, which is a nucleation temperature. And then you'll see a rise in the temperature, which goes up to Tf, which is your freezing temperature. And then you'll see a slow decay during this crystallization, and then temperature drops and equilibrates with the shelf temperature. This is traditionally what you see in during a freezing experiment. Now we are making the assumption that during the entire ice crystallization stage, the temperature stays constant at Tf, which is the freezing temperature. And then we calculate the time that it takes for this crystallization. And then beyond that, again, the temperature drops again to equilibrate with the shelf temperature, which is calculated using the first equation there, with the 0D transient heat transfer. Now to calculate that crystallization time, we use this equation. So this delta T is the crystallization time that we're calculating.
Gayatri, may I
Yes.
ask a naive
Yes.
question?
Yes.
So you're only assuming ice crystallization here and no solute crystallization, right?
Yes. It is just ice crystallization. Yeah.
Just to keep things simple.
Yes. Yes. So we're assuming everything that we can assume
Right.
in order to make it as simple as possible. because it generates answers within a matter of a few seconds, as opposed to tedious computations for many hours. So these are the results that we get. So what we're really interested in looking at is that green curve and the blue curve. So the blue curve is experimentally the temperature profile that is measured using a thermocouple during freezing, and then the green is what this tool predicts. So A is for 5% mannitol and B is for pure water. So we see that the one thing that is very obvious from there is that you're assuming this constant temperature of TF during this crystallization stage. And this crystallization time, if you look at the predicted value, it's always about twice the value of that we observe experimentally. But the good news is that it's over predicting it and not under predicting it. So even if you use that, you'd still be safe. So basically, we know that freezing is an extremely stochastic process. The nucleation time, unless you do controlled nucleation, it's very difficult to predict when it happens. So because of all the complexities associated with predicting any freezing process, this agreement is more or less okay, provided you use some kind of factor of safety and then use that total time to determine or design your cycle for the product. So Peter will now show you how to run LyoPronto to get one of these plots, and then we'll move on to the next mode.
So this is the main file where we input the parameters for our LyoPronto solver. So how it is organized? So there are a lot of comments provided, so you can easily figure out which regimes it have, how it works, what are the input parameters. Every single input parameter is commented here. So the first thing when we should do when we open that file, we need to decide which mode we want to operate in. So there are 4 modes or tools available: freezing calculator, primary drying calculator, design space generator, and optimizer. So we start with freezing calculator. And right here, so all the green stuff is a comment, and this is the line where we need to input the parameters. So we work with freezing calculator. We just can copy this name from here and change it here. So our tool is freezing calculator. There are other parameters of the simulation which should be specified, but particularly for this freezing calculator we don't need them right now. So this is the information about the heat transfer coefficient, kV, resistance of the product, variability of chamber pressure and shelf temperature. All of this stuff you'll need for other tools. So then we need to specify the information about the vial, specifically the vial area and the product area. It depends on the geometry of the vial, as well as fill volume. Then product properties. What we need to know for the freezing calculator, we need to know the solid concentration, the initial product temperature. All of them are specified right here, so you can read about it. Freezing temperature, nucleation temperature. Those parameters were obtained from the experiments. So we will, as an example, we will consider the pure water case. So that's why the solid concentration is 0 here. For what is another parameter, we need the heat transfer coefficient, which is specified here for freezing. So we see that if tool is freezing, or freezing calculator, we need to specify this parameter. So if it's not freezing calculator, it is other tool, then we need to specify other parameters, but we just don't need that. So then we look further. Heat transfer parameters. The only heat transfer parameter for freezing is heat transfer coefficient. Then information about about pressure in the chamber. For freezing, we don't need that. Put 0 here. Then information about shelf temperature profile. We need that. So we specify here. So it's organized like that. If tool is design space generator, you specify certain parameters. Else, if it's not design space generator, if it's not optimizer, then it is okay for freezing calculator. Then I specify parameters here. For freezing, we'll do -20 degrees set point. We'll hold this set point in minutes for 2 hours, 120 minutes. The rate is 0. And here this time step for all the simulations performed in the calculator. So also, what else we have here? We have the information about lyophilizer equipment capability, which can also be specified in terms of the dependence of the chamber pressure from the mass flow rate, which was also obtained experimentally. So, but if you go to different lyophilizer, you can change the parameters here. And equipment load, number of vials. So right now only one shelf is loaded. So that's it for the input files. We just save our changes in the file, and the only thing left, we just need to run the script. We are in the folder, and we run this Python script, the command line, hit enter. We wait just several seconds, like 2-3 seconds, it's done. And then we have outputs. We go to the folder with this file, and at the output we have input file saved with input parameters, output file, and some plots. So in the input file we have some parameters which we put in. So basically this can help when you do many simulations, and then sometime you need to look through what you're doing and which parameters you are setting up. So it's very handy here. Basically all the inputs you use there. The output parameters. So you can post-process them, use them as you want. Basically time history of shelf temperature and product temperature. And like this, we basically plot that information from that file here. So you can quickly look at the profile here. So this is a freezing calculator. Gayatri will continue. Yes, please.
So this has been designed to work with a file system. Can this also be used if you're freezing in trays?
Yes, of course. You need.
You will have to, in terms of the area, you'll have to, modify the code a little bit, and the number of vials and so on does not need to be specified for the freezing, because it's it's considering one vial. But basically your heat transfer coefficient and the areas need to be changed appropriately, and once that's changed, it should work.
It's just called vial, but it can be anything. Yeah.
Have you tried to do this for a tray?
No,
Not yet.
not yet.
Yeah.
How did you pick mannitol and not sucrose for these experiments? I'm just,
we had plenty of mannitol in the lab. As simple as that.
Because when you look at the actual experimental data, you can see that there's ice crystallization,
Yeah.
and then there's another smaller peak.
Bump. Yeah.
Possibly mannitol crystallization.
Possible.
You know, but of course with mannitol you can dry faster.
Yeah.
Sucrose
Takes a long time.
will
Yeah.
take a while.
Yeah. So for the optimizer that I will demonstrate, we don't have experiments. We have numerical data for sucrose,
Okay.
which I'll show you in a little bit. But for the experiments, we just did mannitol, just for the sake of comparison.
Okay.
But we did also compare against some, or benchmark against some actual proteins that people had dried. Well, we took it from the literature. We didn't actually do it ourselves, but we compared against their experimental data just to ensure that the calculator is working fine.
Okay.
So one thing that I want to stress is I know that code looks intimidating to use because there's like a number of things that you need to modify and you don't know what you need to use. But once we have the GUI, that should be very, very intuitive. So I promise we're going to have that out there in the next few months. So once that's there, you know, you're all free to use it and it should be easy to use. So I'll go over this Lyo calculator part pretty quickly because I think most of you are already familiar with it. So one thing here is that this considers center vials. So we make this 1D assumption in this Lyo calculator. Basically, edge effect is not considered. So you don't consider any of the edge vials. There's no radiation from the walls. So this very popular 1D quasi-steady heat transfer. So basically you have a vial that's sitting on top of a shelf. It makes contacts on the sides. So there is contact heat transfer because of conduction, and then there is a gas layer that's trapped between the vial and the shelf. So that's this gas conduction, and then there's radiation from the bottom shelf and from the top shelf. So that is considered. So now if you look inside that product, there is a blue part and the yellow part. So that yellow part is your dried layer, and the blue part is the frozen product that still needs to dry. So as you progress in time, you know, you have more and more cake that's drying, and once the entire layer is dried, your primary drying is done. So to quickly tell you what the flow chart of what this code does, you specify certain inputs. You specify your vial properties, basically the geometry of your vial. Equipment properties, in this case, is just the heat transfer coefficient. The heat transfer coefficient is specific to a vial and lyophilizer combination. So once you know that, you can specify that, which is what we call KV. And if you don't know, you can extract that if you have one experimental run. And then the product and fill details, basically the product resistance, and then your fill volume. And you specify the chamber pressure and shelf temperature set points. You don't have to specify just the constant value. You can specify a ramp and multiple different values if you want. So it can take care of all of that. And then you initialize it. Basically, initially the entire length of the product needs to be frozen. The dried cake is 0, and you start with a 0 time. And you basically do an iterative solution where you calculate this T sub, which is the sublimation front temperature, and then you calculate the pressure of the sublimation front. The driving force in general during lyophilization is the pressure difference between your sublimation front and the chamber. So that's basically this pressure difference, and M sub is the mass flow rate or the sublimation rate. So it depends directly on this pressure difference. And then it calculates the bottom, the temperature at the bottom, or the layer of the product that's in contact with the vial. It calculates the temperature there, and the length of the product that's dried at every step in time. And you keep looping through, or you keep iterating. So you move forward in time, and then you calculate all these quantities. This goes on till the entire product is dried, and then you stop the calculation. So this is the mannitol case that we compared against, but we did do comparisons against other things. I won't show them here just because we don't have enough time for it. So let me explain to you the two plots. The plot on the left, basically that blue jagged line that you see, that's the experimental shelf temperature measurement. Our set point was -5, so it kind of is around -5, and that's specified as an input to LioPronto, which is our tool. So the shelf temperature is always at -5. The chamber pressure is set here at 150 millitorr, and you always have this Pirani and capacitance manometer pressure, and the end point of primary drying is, in general, the practice is this point of convergence of the Pirani and capacitance manometer, that is taken as the end point of primary drying. So that's what we use here. But that's not specified as an input, that is an output from the simulations. Experimentally, we also have thermocouples sitting in a number of center vials, and we average those values, and that's the orange curve that you see in the plot on the left. That's the experimental product temperature that we measured. So then we run the simulation using our tool, and we get all these temperatures and the sublimation flux. Basically, the sublimation flux is this green line. You see that the end point of primary drying is here, and that matches very closely with what we see in the experiments also. So, you know, our code is working well in terms of predicting how long it takes to dry. Also, the temperatures match pretty well with the product temperature. There is an error there. I think the arrows for the temperature at the bottom and sublimation front are interchanged. Usually the bottom is at a higher temperature than the sublimation front, so it's just swapped. But you see that it's the bottom temperature is what the thermocouple is measuring, and it's pretty close to what we see in the experiments as well. So we know that our model works well. Peter will just show you how to run this Lio calculator, and then we'll move on to the optimizer part of it.
I have a quick question before you go.
Yes.
To the code. Could you go back to the diagram?
Yes.
For the height of the frozen before it starts drying, are you measuring that experimentally before it's frozen or after it's frozen? It might expand a little bit when it freezes,
So that is just calculated. What you specify is the fill volume for the
Okay.
solution initially.
So it's
And based on that, and you specify the solute concentration and so on, and you know the density of the solute in the solution. Based on that, it's calculated.
So let's run the primary drying calculator. So we change the mode from freezing calculator to primary drying calculator right here. The vial information about vial is same. Then we need to specify product properties. We don't care about freezing parameters we input here, so the code won't go in this part. So the solid concentration is 5% mannitol. The critical temperature is -5 degrees. Then the KV, the heat transfer coefficient, is specified for this particular Milrock Revo lyophilizer based on our experiments. Then information about chamber pressure. Chamber pressure is fixed on 150 millitorr here. The set point is 1800 minutes, so it would take enough to finish freeze drying, primary drying. The information about shelf temperature, we fix it at -5 degrees and hold it, let's say, same 1800 minutes to make sure the drying is finished. Time step, equipment capability limit same, number of vials 398, so only one shelf is loaded, so we make sure that limit is not exceeded. So this is all the parameters we need to know. We just save the file and we just run the script. It takes several seconds to run. So it's very, in comparison to CFD simulations, this is very nice in terms of time. So this is done, and what we have at the output. At the output, we have the same input file, saved output. So here we have in the output the time, sublimation temperature, while bottom temperature, shelf temperature, time history of all these parameters, chamber pressure, sublimation flux, and percent dried at every moment of time. So we can take this data and do whatever we want. So, and as an output, we also have several plots. If we want to take a quick look at the plots, so we don't even need to make these plots by ourselves. It's already there. So we have sublimation flux, which is a green axis, and the chamber pressure constant 150. It's information about temperatures. Sublimation front temperature and maximum product temperature. So it's correct here. So when shelf temperature is -5, it's fixed. So basically, this is how it works. Next, Gayatri will be talking about design space generator and optimizer modes.
So any questions about these calculators before we move on? Okay, so another thing that the tool can do is generate a design space. This is kind of what a design space in general looks like. We won't demonstrate how to do that because it's very similar to the calculator itself. You just need to change that calculator mode name to design space generator. But basically, what a design space is, for those who are not familiar, is a plot of this kind. So that black line is the equipment capability. In this case, we don't really need to worry about the equipment capability too much because we've only loaded one shelf. So in general, when you have very high sublimation rates, your flow chokes. What that means is your Mach number is equal to 1. So the flow flows at the same speed of sound. So then that you basically hit the limit, maximum mass flow rate through this duct that you have between the chamber and the condenser. If you try to make more product sublimate, then you're going to lose control of the chamber pressure, and you don't want that happening because it could ruin the product. So basically you want to operate under the equipment capability. So that black line, you want to be on its right side and below it. And then this is the critical product temperature, which in this case for mannitol we're taking it as -5 degrees Celsius because usually the critical temperatures are around -2. We're giving about 3 degrees safety. But if you go to sucrose solutions or so on, it's going to be much lower. Now these dotted lines are isotherms for different shelf temperatures. So if you operate at say -5 degrees Celsius, this is how your sublimation flux is going to vary with the chamber pressure. So each of those values represents a particular shelf temperature. So what this plot tells you is your safe design or safe operating zone is this yellow zone because you want to be below the critical product temperature, and then you want to be on the right of that equipment capability. So this is actually a good plot to look at that. So you want to operate in this anywhere in this yellow region is okay, but the most optimal point is the point where you have the highest sublimation flux. Here we're imposing another condition, which is the maximum shelf temperature. We're setting it at 120. Milroy Revo is not really capable of 120. The maximum is 65. But if somebody builds a lyophilizer that can do 120, we're safe to go till there because beyond that the stopper quality and so on is not good. So in the tool, you don't have to set it at 120. You can set it at any value that you want. You can set it at 60. You can set it at 30. it all works fine. So you want to operate at the point where the sublimation flux is the maximum, because that will ensure that your drying time is the shortest. But this is basically the design space at different instances of time. In general, what is done is you have one design space for the entire cycle. So instead of that, if you generated the design space at different instances of time, so A is when none of the cake is dried. So basically beginning of the primary drying. This is when B is when half of it is done. So basically the cake length is 50% of the initial product length, and C is when the cake length is equal to the initial product length, basically towards the end of primary drying. So what we're trying to demonstrate here is that your most optimal condition, which is represented by that black flower thing, that varies quite significantly throughout your cycle. What that tells you is that operating at a single chamber pressure and single shelf temperature is not the most optimal thing you could be doing during your primary drying. Varying it at every instant of time, that's the way to go. So eventually we're hoping that we can integrate this code and have a self-drying freeze dryer. It's like an autopilot system. But even now, if you can just change the controls and the feedback a little bit to be able to run this variable chamber pressure and shelf temperature, you're going to get a significant amount of time that is saved because of doing this. And we'll show you that. This is basically what the optimizer does. So it's very similar to the Lyo calculator, except here you don't specify a set point for the chamber pressure or for the shelf temperature. Instead, what you specify are this equipment capability. This is a design space that we saw. You specify the equipment capability. Now, how you know that is you can do experiments. You can do just in a tray, you can load water, you can run that experiment, or you can run CFD simulations because it's been demonstrated in plenty of papers that that's pretty simple to do. As long as you know your geometry, you can run a CFD simulation, extract that equipment capability. Or I don't know, your vendor might be able to provide it to you if they have done those experiments. So once you know that equipment capability, and then you know what product you're drying, so you know the critical product temperature, which is that red line. And then you can specify minimum and maximum limits for your chamber pressure and shelf temperature, and you let the code run. So basically it's going to figure out this optimal point, that blue triangle, at every instant of time, and then it's going to give you a time variation of the chamber pressure and shelf temperature that would give you the most optimal results. So these are some of the results. This is for the 5% mannitol case that we were running. So the plot A is what we initially saw. That's the Lyo calculator basically. So you fix the chamber pressure and you fix the shelf temperature, 150 millitorr, 30 degrees Celsius. So your drying takes about slightly over 5 hours. Now, if you were to vary both the chamber pressure and shelf temperature, in this case, you get a 62% faster cycle. One thing to note here is that the shelf temperature is limited to a maximum value of 120. Like I said, it could be lower depending on what lyophilizer equipment you're using. And we're also restricting the minimum chamber pressure to 50 millitorr because below that there are a lot of leaks into the system, becomes very difficult to control. So we limit the minimum chamber pressure to 50. So you see, instead of maintaining it at a constant value like it is over there, if you vary this chamber pressure such that your maximum product temperature is always at this limiting value, then you're able to get a faster cycle. So basically what you see here is you see a varying chamber pressure, and then beyond this point, the most optimal value is actually below 50, but since we're restricting it to 50, it always stays at 50 millitorr. And this shelf temperature stays at 120 for the most part, and then drops. Now, there might be a lot of questions about, 120 is too aggressive. You don't know if the cake is even going to stay in the vial, and so on. So we do have a case there where the shelf temperature is 30 degrees Celsius, which is very reasonable for mannitol, and only the chamber pressures vary. So you see, even if you just do that, you're able to get a 40% faster cycle. This seems just like a couple of hours in this case because it's one shelf of mannitol in a lab scale LIO, but on a production run it's going to be a lot more hours than that. And just for the sake of completion, we have here a case where the chamber pressure is fixed and the shelf temperature is varied. Again, the shelf temperature goes to 120. You can restrict it to a lower value, and you will still see a significant improvement in the time. Now, since we were speaking about sucrose earlier, we do have a sucrose cycle as well, very similar to the previous case, but instead of 5% mannitol, we use 5% sucrose solution. Same lyophilizer, same kind of vial, one shelf is loaded again. But the interesting thing to note here is that since our product temperature or the limiting product temperature is much lower in this case, because sucrose solution, the critical temperature is around -32, so we just restrict it to -35. So it can't go to -5, which is quite high. So there you see that even though you've restricted the maximum shelf temperature again to 120, you don't go anywhere close to 120 because you don't want that product going to such a high temperature. Now, the first one is a typical cycle that we got from the literature, 65 millitorr -30 degrees Celsius cycle. So now B is kind of different from the previous slide. Here you're operating at very optimal conditions, but it's still a single step cycle. By single step, I mean a single set point for the chamber pressure and shelf temperature. So that's the most optimal that you can run. And that's about 30% faster when compared to what is typically done. But if you do this multi-step cycle, which is basically variable chamber pressure and shelf temperature, you're reducing the drying time by half. Now you may tell me that this chamber pressure is not really varying. That's because at every instant, the most optimal value is below 50 millitorr, but since we're restricting that minimum value to 50, it just stays at 50, and then your shelf temperature varies. So that's something the code figured out on its own. We didn't ask it to stay at 50 millitorr. We only said don't go below 50 millitorr. So basically, this kind of an output is what the code is going to give you. So you see that you're able to save a significant amount of time by operating at these variable pressure and shelf temperature conditions. And now Peter will show you how to use that optimizer.
So we switch from primary drying calculator to optimizer. The difference there will be in chamber pressure specification and shelf temperature. So instead of using constant values, we'll be using varying values. So we say it here, variable chamber pressure, yes, variable shelf temperature, yes. And also we need to change it to optimizer, the tool itself. Optimizer. We click save. The information about the product is the same. The only thing we need to check other limits for the pressure and temperature. So we go to chamber pressure and we see what other limits. So for the optimizer, we go to this part and we see that minimum is 0.05 torr or 50 millitorr, and maximum is not basically limited, almost 1000 torr. For shelf temperature, same thing. We just set up the limits, minimum and maximum. Maximum is 120 degrees, we set up here. Minimum -45. So basically that's it, because all the other information we'll be using it in the primary drying tool. We save it and then run the script. It takes a little bit longer than primary drying calculator, because it is basically optimization process, but still it is kind of 10, 15, 20 seconds, not more. So as well we'll have output files. here. So the input file is already generated. I refresh it. So what else we can change here? We can specify any plots we want to have at the output. We can turn off this thing, so we can change any outputs. If you want to go into this Python script, so all this stuff is looks scary, but it's not. It's just a plot generation. So everything we need is up to here. It's done. Let's look at the output. So we have output, pressure, sublimation flux, percent dry, temperatures. So let's look at pressure and sublimation flux. So the pressure goes down until it reaches the limit, and then it stays the same. It would go down, but we don't want that. Sublimation flux and temperatures. So basically the same information you've seen on the previous slides. It is kept on the level of 120 degrees, and then in the very end it goes down a little bit. So this is the optimizer. And output, you can plot it anywhere you want. Same thing as in the primary drawing calculator. So it is so easy to use, so fast. It doesn't require almost any resources. You can run it on your cell phone. So, if any questions?
Does your group have any intention in the future to develop this tool for secondary drawing as well as primary?
Yes, we're definitely going to extend it to secondary drawing. Yeah.
For the freezing portion, have you done this for high fill volumes?
No, not
Yeah,
yet.
try
No,
that.
because the Biot number is going to be even higher.
higher.
So yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And in that case, you may want to probably try putting maybe multiple thermocouples across the entire fill volume to have a comparison.
Yeah.
Because sure, very often, we will target a fill height of, let's say, approximately 1 centimeter.
Right.
But very often we do have products, let's say in a 100 ml vial with
Right.
a 50 milliliter fill volume.
Right.
And you can see interesting cake appearances.
I see. Okay.
And product temperature will be different.
Right.
So that's just a thought.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great suggestion. It's something that we should probably look at. And
This is the next upgrade.
Next upgrade.
Uh-huh. Version 2.0.
Yeah. For free.
Do you guys have any other even suggestions that we could add to our tool and so on?
Are you going to extend it from vials to non-vial systems?
Yeah, definitely. Syringes, which are kind of similar, and then trays, and eventually we'd kind of even want to do like a continuous lyophilization process. Should be able to model that. That's the end goal. It's far away, but we're getting there slowly. So everything that's there right now, we're in the process of publishing a paper about it that will be made available with open access, so anybody can download it. So if you have any questions or you'd like to know more about it, it should be out in the next few months, and then you can download that. If you have any questions about how to use it, please feel free to email either Peter or myself, or even Professor Alexenko if you're not able to get in touch with us. Like I said, we should have the GUI up and running soon. So once that's done, it should be much easier to use than downloading this complicated code and running it. So
I have one more question. It looks like you've model this for small molecules of sugars that you're working with,
Mhm.
do you expect it to behave any differently if you're lyophilizing very large proteins or polymers?
So we did compare against some proteins. So for the like I said, just for the sake of benchmarking our code, we compared against some experimental runs that were available in the literature, and it was able to predict it pretty okay. In terms of the optimization, we haven't actually experimentally tried it on any proteins. So once that's out, we will publish that, and then you'll have that information. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question for you. So, do you know what we're doing right now with developing the flexible thing on the side of the? You know
Yeah.
about that, right?
Yeah, I know.
So, how difficult and how accurate can you do the? Because I saw the literature they do the convolution to compare to calculate the temperature inside of them. Do you know how to do that?
Temperature inside the vial.
So we have the temperature outside of the vial.
Yeah, so
We
you
have to calculate it
inside.
inside.
You'll need to know the heat transfer through
Yes,
the glass.
if we know everything,
If you know everything, it should be very easy.
very easy, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Because talking to the company, you know which company I'm talking about?
No.
I'm not supposed to say, but
I see.
they're worried about we're not measuring.
The actual
Inside.
product temperature.
Yeah.
Okay.
But assuming because I saw literature, this says there's no problem, right? And we are using the valve, it's supposed to be known. So can I just tell them that it's easily done?
Yeah.
But knowing the properties of that glass is not. I don't think it's that simple.
But we're using standard valve. I mean,
Oh, they vary,
No,
man.
man.
Like those vials, even the geometry varies so much between like two vials that are
but
supposed to be
so
standard.
can I say it can be done?
It can be done. I don't know the percentage uncertainty associated with it.
Okay.
Depends on the uncertainty in the properties of the glass.
But can it be done? I mean,
Yeah,
I need to
it
tell
can
people that
be done.
It can be done. Okay.
To first approximation, it can be done.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, that's a good way
Right,
to
that's
put it.
what I need. That's what I need because I have to tell them that. Okay. Because they are willing to. Because the reason why I do it also because it's non-invasive, right? Because I think invasive is bad.
Yeah.
They literally said, "You're not measuring actual thing. We should go invasive," which I think is nonsense, right? Nobody likes invasive.
Or some people think that that it's the most accurate representation, so they maybe that's their first.
We
step.
don't need that accurate, right?
You do, but
yeah, you do, and it depends on the system. If you're freeze drying mannitol, you don't.
yeah.
But if you have a complex formulation with, let's say, with a lot of salt, and it's collapse sensitive, let's say even sucrose, then it does matter. And sure, there's variability from vial to vial, but I think it's variability that we can handle.
Yeah.
Because you know what will happen if you try to decrease that variability, your container cost goes up, which means your product cost goes up, which means your revenue goes down. But that's a very different way of looking at it.
Yeah. Industry perspective.
No, I mean this is what we learn, at work, that they want sometimes you want the product to be cheap, especially if it's a antibiotic and you're selling it in the developing parts of the world where you want patients to have access. That's where that becomes a rate limiting step. And if you want to, if your vials are very expensive and then cost is a big issue.
Right.
I thought I had another question and I forgot. I know one question was about the high fill volumes. Try a tall fill volume. Even in your 2 ml fill, I don't know if you've tried putting two thermocouples,
No,
one
we
on the
did not
top
try
and one
that.
on the bottom.
Yeah.
And have you tried putting a thermocouple outside, just for the fun of it?
Oh, yeah. We should try that. Yeah.
A flat face thermocouple. And then I think I asked a question about dual chamber syringes. we have an Excel-based model internally that
Right.
you're aware of.
Right.
That I think Sergey has presented
Yeah,
many,
yeah.
many times.
We have that.
You have that,
Excel
so you know
calculator.
I look at this and it's
It's the same, yeah.
it's helpful.
Mhm.
Dual chamber syringes. It'll come back to me. Have you tried doing this for? Yes, the other colleague from Cook was asking about proteins.
Oh, proteins.
More than that, looking at a low solids concentration versus a
High solid
high solids concentration.
Mhm.
You know, so it may not matter if it's a protein or a small molecule,
Mhm.
but the viscosity may matter.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about.
Mhm.
And there's one more thing. It'll come back.
Okay.
Viscosity. Yeah. Yeah. I'll look for the. I'll go online and I'll check it out.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll
Great.
go play
Thank
with
you.
it. No,
Yeah.
you're welcome. This is
Yeah.
very nice.
Thank
How
you.
long did this take to develop?
I think I started it about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you come up with Pronto? Because when I saw, I've heard about Pronto, and I thought that this was being developed by our friends in Italy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Roberto's group in
Yeah,
Milan.
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, so
yeah. So basically, we started like a bunch of keywords,
yes.
and then we kept looking at it, and I came up with a bunch of options.
Okay.
And Professor Agzenko picked Pronto because she liked it best, and she's like, our friends in Italy will like it.
When I saw it, I told Sergey, I said, this must be from Pisano's group, and no, but it's Purdue. So
Yeah.
the Italians must be raging mad because you something else came in and I forgot. But
You can email us if
Okay.
if it ever comes back to you.
okay, all right, nice job.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
I have another research question.
Uh-huh.
So in the presentation you said about optimizations, right? So you're saying with all the set point input, you have like a different length of the cake.
Mhm.
You can control the
Mhm.
Chamber pressure.
chamber pressure and get. How do you measure the cake length in the actual system?
You don't. You calculate it.
Well, like actual, that's gonna be different, right?
No, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good approximation.
So
of
did you
what's
try to do like this multi-stage pressure control?
No, we don't. I mean, so Drew is working on actually doing that or being able to do that. Kind of hacked into the system and figured out a way
Oh,
to
you
control
cannot do it
the
with Revo?
temperature. No, you can't do it. Or you can specify like 5 different chamber pressures or something like that,
Yeah,
but
you-
that's not like a continuous thing.
Yeah,
like
you can specify that it's not going to be
Well,
continuous.
Yeah.
if we do complete manual control of the Revo,
Mhm.
that we can do it, right?
Yeah,
That's what I'm talking about.
yeah.
In the manual mode,
Yeah, you can do it.
No, you
No, you
can't.
can't
You
do it in
can't
the
do like
manual
continu-
mode.
So we have like 3-minute time steps.
yes.
So at that interval, you cannot do it. You can only
3
do.
minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, no, that's too extreme. I'm just talking about like proof of concept.
You can do 5 set points. That's the limit that Revo has.
Yeah, because you only have so many fields,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Have you done any comparison with the? Do you guys have a LiveStar with the smart feature?
Yeah.
So have you done have you ever run a cycle within smart and let it do its thing? You specify your parameters because it constantly adjusts.
Does it adjust the chamber pressure and shelf temperature though? I don't think it varies. I thought the smart one was like it calculates like the RP and stuff on its own.
And
so
I
on.
haven't used
Mhm.
smart in 13 years.
Oh, okay.
So I've forgotten.
I don't think it controls.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe not. That I think that's a utopic vision. So
Yep,
so
exactly.
the question is, Revo can go up to 65 degrees.
Mhm.
How high have you pushed it to? 40 degrees? Have you done an experiment
We did one experiment at 60.
at 60?
Mhm.
So here's the.
But with mannitol.
Okay. And here's the devil's advocate part of
Mhm.
it. In your regulatory filing
Mhm.
with the FDA,
Mhm.
you have to specify a process
Mhm.
in your filing.
Mhm.
And in the dossier, you say, this is the drying temperature and chamber pressure, and that's related to your batch record. And so anything that's different is at this point not acceptable.
Right.
You know, so how does one? So when, obviously this is great when Sergey teaches Lyo School internally. We actually have a little competition in the class saying who can design the fastest cycle. Okay, and so we know what the equipment limits are.
Now you can just use Lyo Pronto, get your design space.
And so we do that with the
with your Excel code, yeah.
with our Excel code, and you as long as the constraint is it should not exceed the
Critical product.
the critical product temperature and the equipment capability.
Right.
And so you can freeze dry super fast, but the reality is very different.
Right.
And so convincing the agency, that's a challenging part. So
As long as, you know, I think we need to do a number of experiments, show them that, you know, the product is actually okay,
yeah,
doesn't collapse and looks okay and so on. So elegant cake and all of these
they
things.
need that. Yeah, they will need that, and I think somebody has to present this at a conference where folks from the FDA and the European Medicines Agency will be there. Is Alina presenting this at ISLFD?
I'm not sure. I'll need to ask her about it.
In Ghent. I will ask her if I
Yeah.
see her. Especially trying to make the point that you can dry as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So, but that has to be backed up with actual data for a small molecule or a large molecule. So.
I had shown some initial preliminary plots last year at ISLFD in 2018 in Chicago.
Okay.
I think there were a couple of people from the FDA, but not a whole lot.
And I think many times this may be too much of a deep dive.
Yeah.
When you show the code, the eyes glaze over. When you show 4 graphs and if there are more than 2 lines, people in general will not keep up with you.
Right.
So both of you did a really nice job of walking through, and thank you. And it's lunchtime, right?
Yep.
All right. Where's lunch in the same room?
Jen's here to usher
I
us.
have a quick question. So
Yeah.
all the optimization is based on the cake length again, right? And you didn't consider, in this you only give but there's going to be for Interactive for Rivo, for example, if you do monitor, the cake length is not uniform during the primary drying across the shelf. So the edge effects.
Yeah, so edge effect is not considered here. This is only assuming everything is a center vial.
In reality, the cake length is very different. That's what I mean.
I agree.
You have to measure that.
You don't have to measure it. There are ways of modeling the radiation from the wall for the edge
but my
effect.
problem, my sensor can measure it.
Okay.
So.
So we should integrate the code
exactly.
and your sensor.
So
yeah.
If my sensor.
So dude, ultimately this is what we need for autopilot system, right? We need your sensor to measure the temperature. We need Drew sensor to measure pressure and sublimation rate, and then we need this code to do the calculation. Then that's done.
That's my plan.
Yeah.
I don't care about I can tell you, we're actually no longer working with Zima. We're working with Optima.
Oh, okay.
That's really bad, but
okay.
It's fine. I can tell you this, but I don't care about what they want. For me, for my publication, one,
Is there a reason you decided not to go with Ima?
It's just the industry don't like Ima.
Oh.
They actually have. Do you know this?
No.
They have a really bad relationship, and it's
Really?
just fucked up. Okay. Anyway, I don't care about this, right? I'm gonna do whatever they ask. That's not. I have to do it. My own paper. I already published one. You know that, right? That's invasive. Right?
Yeah.
I'm now working on the. Do you see the data what I have before with my new design?
No.
I can show you.
Yeah.
Because my new design is although it does not measure the actual thing, right? But it can measure the cake length. So and with your thing, we can easily, we just do 4 or 5, maybe few stage, 30 minutes apart or whatever to improve it working. Then that's just by itself.
Yeah, man, it's it's a lot of savings. And
that's what I mean. So we basically we're just saying, okay, we based on the cake list, we're based on the center valve because it's the slowest.
Yeah.
So we can, as long as we can show from your slide, it's a lot of improvement.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna quickly because I was reviewing the data. Where is that meeting? So this guy is from Optima. He's literally said,
I know him.
yeah. So he's literally saying,
Germany, right?
so he solved my design, flexible prototype, right? He's not imagining sensor, so we should focus on invasive product temperature. What the fuck? I mean, I don't think he's aware that we can.
Dude, what if you just put invasive and non-invasive in the same
That's too
during the
much.
same run, and then no, just to show him that they're the same, or how much of a difference there is.
The problem is my invasive design is not that stable.
Not your design, just put a thermocouple.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm just gonna show him, but it's fine. It's later work, but
So have you seen how much of a difference there is?
I haven't done that.
Okay.
The only thing I have right now is I made the prototype, so it's a flexible thing. I just tape, so I'm getting good data. It's the newer design is much stable, and the data is really clean, and you can see the separation. The
Yeah.
separation means length.
Yeah.
That's length. So with this information, I mean,
Yeah.
that's okay, yeah. And,
Yeah,
and
man.
this is a freezing profile.
Yeah, if you ever get like a comparison with a thermocouple, can you send that data to me? It's like, it'll be interesting to see how much of a deviation. I don't expect too much of a deviation.
I mean, the literature. So you read the paper where the people in the thin-film thermocouples.
No.
There are there's a paper from 2016.
Uh-huh.
They using thin-film thermocouple. This is it's the same thing. They attach the cell wall.
Right.
They do some deconvolution, and they said it's acceptable. I mean, I'm just gonna copy what they did. And so this shows very similar to what they have.
Yeah.
So it just did. The bottom one, I mean, I don't understand about this, but yeah, it's, so I have this one working. So yeah, it's good. I mean, if you, this is a freezing, it looks good, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess this is, I don't know. Okay, so maybe we have a chance to do this. So the plan is I'm gonna do that. I don't know when, because Dimitri put a lot of shit in me. On me. Oh my God. I have this prototype earlier this year, and I haven't started working on this continuously. I just I put it in the free dryer. I run it a couple times, make sure that the firmware everything works. And
So right now, how do you beam it out? Is it like real-time data or?
Yeah, real time.
Real
Everything
time?
is real
Okay.
time. And you can put a lot. And normally I put 5 or 10 per tray.
Okay.
So, but like that's from my previous sensor, invasive one. I see a huge difference.
Okay.
Well, that makes sense, right? The
Yeah.
edge feels
Yeah.
like double.
Of course.
So that's what I'm
And
talking
especially
about.
like on a lab scale, is quite a lot.
You
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
measure that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. And also, you're saying in the beginning, you're like calculates the KV, for example.
If you know the drying time, it just fits it to that.
Yeah,
It's just
so-
like looping through like a number of. It's just like a for loop. Dude.
So my sensor can't approximate that as well, because my
I
sensor
see,
can
okay.
approximate the dry
Yeah.
time. So I was wondering if you could use this to improve your model. I'm
yeah,
not sure.
yeah, of course. If we have measurements, it's
Yeah,
it's
just
always better.
Talk to Lenny now, I guess.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, I definitely need some help. I have who's that? Tatsuhiro before, and he's not gone. I need somebody else to help me. I mean, if you want, you can help me.
I'm not going to be around for very much longer.
When are
I'm
you
waiting
leaving?
for my OPT, so as soon as I
Okay.
get it, I will leave.
Oh, I miss Tatsuhiro
But
so
if
much.
I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take at this point. So if I'm around, I can definitely help.
Okay, I mean, I'm planning to start this soon. I mean, earlier next semester, I'll start this.
Oh, next semester? No, man.
No man, you can definitely be gone. Okay, I mean that's fine. Somebody else gonna continue this, right? Who's gonna
Yeah, I
continue?
think so. I think Peter's going to be
Peter?
working on
Okay,
it.
then
Yeah.
he's the man.
Yeah.
I miss Tatsuhiro so much.
Yeah, that's what was great.
I literally I just like, what should I do? Be like, do this. Yeah, thanks.
No problem, man.